morning, Roxy Soxy.
Good morning, Tam Tam. How are you doing?
I looked at you this morning and I'm like, why do you look so pretty?
Oh,
But now I feel really bad because then you're like, why the hell did you say, why do I look so pretty? Meaning like, did I not look pretty this entire time that I was been with you for the year?
Oh,
No, you look
thank
really like, and the first thing I was like, is like, did you have sex? Because you look so pretty. You're all sparkly. What's going on? What's going on?
It could be that vaccine glow.
Oh, yes. That'll get people more vaccinated when you say your skin looks really beautiful after you get the first shot.
Right? So there you go. That's a reason to do it.
Maybe there's like an extra little bit of collagen and something. Or
Oh
maybe
my
you're
God.
just flushed because you have like a severe temperature.
Or could
Maybe
be
you
a
have a
new
104
flush.
fever, Roxy. Maybe that's the problem.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you got to get the flush somehow, you know?
I know. You got to do it. But so you're not having sex. It's not from the vaccine. You just look really hot today. So,
Oh my
okay.
Thank you.
That's just what it is. I actually had my therapy session just before here.
Uh-huh.
And like I was like, she's like, but you're a pretty girl. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm so ugly.
Oh my
and then
God.
like after my therapy session, I'm thinking it's so ridiculous to even like think about that stuff and worry about it. But we do. We care so much about our appearance. And it's like such a ridiculous thing to worry about. You know what I mean? Like, who cares if you have stretch marks? Who cares if you got an extra little gut? Who cares if you're too thin or whatever?
But
like,
we
what does
do.
it matter?
But we do. We so care about it. And it's like, I think we have to work on it every day because it's one of those things that's like ingrained in our brains. And it's like, how do we just let it go? You know? I want to let it go.
Can't. I have to be honest with my people on social media because it's like 50% of me wants to be like, I accept my body and I love my body. And these
But is
stretch
that how you
marks like
feel
built
every day?
No. And it's
Yeah.
like, but and then my stomach built this beautiful baby and I love my baby,
Mhm.
which I do. But I also want to say like, and I wish I bounced back faster,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I wish I, but then you feel even guilty for saying that. I think all of it is hard to navigate. And I think mental health is so important to talk about. And it's also okay to be like honest about shame and feeling vulnerable about feelings, the things that you don't like about yourself. Like,
Mhm.
isn't that okay?
I feel like that's okay. And I feel like the more we put it out there and talk about it, the better, because it's like one thing to feel it and not say it. But if
Yeah.
you say it and put it out there and you're honest about it, I think
Almost
that
feels
makes
better.
a difference. Yes. Because
Yes.
it's cathartic. It's cathartic, and it helps people.
Yeah. And that's why, I've been
Mhm.
following this next lovely lady.
Mm.
Do you say lady these days? Do you say girl? You say lady, woman,
Warrior. She's a warrior.
powerhouse thing. I don't even know what you call people these days. I've been following her for a while and I reached out to her because she is all about helping people uncover their power and their
Mhm.
clarity. She has a podcast. She's an author. She has a book coming out on May 4th, which is called I Am Here. She's a social media powerhouse. I can't pronounce her last name, so she's going to have to help me. But her first name is Ashley, and she can finish up with the second part.
Would you like
Hey guys!
Hey,
Ashley, welcome.
Ashley, please say the last name because
Yes.
I just screwed that up.
Okay, I have to tell you, my husband and I got engaged so fast that the first question my dad and my sister asked me was how to spell my last name. And I did not know. I literally didn't know. So
No way.
you're totally good. But it's Lemieux. Ashley
Oh,
Lemieux.
that's beautiful.
Lemieux. It's so
It-
fun, right?
Lemieux,
It is.
Lemieux,
It means-
Lemieux.
Mhm.
It means the best in French. So I feel
Ah.
really good about it.
And so he can
Uh-huh.
just say to you like, oh, you married the best.
I know. He can. It's
I know I
kind of
should
the
have
worst
changed my
and the
last
best.
name. I'm such like I'm such a feminist in that way. Like I'm like, no, I've spent so long in my last name. And then my husband's like, well, what about my last name? So we're a hyphenate. So we're all a hyphenate family. Not in like in the media, but
Mhm.
on our birth certificate and all that. We've all changed, not birth certificate, but like our driver's license and all that. We've changed to a hyphenate. So
you're inclusive of everybody.
yeah, I mean, you took your husband's name, didn't you, Moxie?
Yes, but I
Look at
only-
you.
But I only did it on the first anniversary. That was his anniversary gift because it was such a pain in the butt to change everything
Mhm.
that I was like, you know what? After the wedding, I was like, I'm just gonna like take my time with this.
Yeah.
I was really soaking up, like having my
Being your own
maiden name, my
person.
last, right. Having my own identity before, But yeah, that was his first anniversary present because it really was a lot of work.
What was your
to get
name
done.
before?
Khan, like Genghis Khan.
Oh, I never knew that. Roxy Khan.
Yes.
Well, today, and this podcast is probably going to delve into some subjects that we talk about a lot. And I was looking at Ashley's Instagram today, and she was almost in tears because she got her period, and I'm about to get my period, so I understand that feeling very sensitive before getting your period. But her story is very different because she's been trying to get pregnant and having to dealing with infertility. So, Ashley, can you talk us a little bit about what's going on right now in your life?
Yes. So everything feels really new. And this is actually the first time I've talked about it on a podcast. So if I stumble a little bit, bear with me, you guys. But I guess to tell you about what's going on right now, I need to tell you about what happened. It's almost been a year ago now. And my husband and I decided to get pregnant, to try to get pregnant in November of 2019. And that was after coming out of losing two children that we had raised for over half of their lives. We had permanent guardianship over them. We raised them as a family for over 4 years, and we lost them overnight. And so a couple of years coming out of healing from that, we decided, okay, it's time to step forward and try to grow our family again. Here we go. So we got pregnant a month later, and it was the first time we had tried to get pregnant. So we didn't know how long it was going to take. You never know that first shot. And so we got pregnant right away. We were so excited. We moved into our brand new house that a couple months later, like everything just felt like this moment that we were just moving forward in our lives finally. And during the week that COVID shut everything down last year, 3 days after we moved into our house, I went septic. So I was 16 weeks pregnant. And all of a sudden, within literally a span of 2 hours, I went from being fine to screaming and having an ambulance drive me as fast as possible to the hospital. It was the same day that the hospitals closed off any visitors. So I had to go in without my husband, which is when we learned I had sepsis. And if you're not familiar with sepsis, it's a blood infection that starts to take over your entire body, has a very high death rate. And especially when you're pregnant, it's very dangerous. So at first the baby was okay. And then 2 days later, there was no more heartbeat and we lost him. His name is Jace. And then for the next several months, I'm trying to recover from a miscarriage, from a childbirth, and from sepsis. And my body it's like everything physically and emotionally exploded from the inside out. And my husband and I were in this place of, do we try to have kids again? Like, do we even try again? Because it feels like our heart's been broken so many times. And if it were to happen again, like, I just don't know if we could handle that. So in October, I finally got cleared that my body was healthy enough to carry a pregnancy again. And since then, we've been trying to get pregnant. So it's now March. So it's been several months. We haven't gotten pregnant yet. I'm doing all of the things right now. We're doing acupuncture for fertility. I've totally changed my eating. I'm doing all these things. And then last month we started with a fertility specialist, which is where we're at right now. And so that's why it was so upsetting when my period just started, because it, I guess, was our first month of unsuccessful fertility treatments. And we're just in this place right now where we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we want our kids so badly. And so it all just feels, it's a lot. It feels like a lot.
Ashley, I was looking, just doing such a deep dive in your social media, and really, I was hanging on to every word that you were saying and in your posts. You're such a gifted and beautiful writer, and you feel all the feels like when you're reading your words, and you've been really open and honest about, infertility and about grief and, just going through the process and going through the pain, And I want to know how are you able to do that? Because I know, like, I don't think I would be that strong. I
Right.
feel like for me, so I find like sometimes it's almost easier for me to cut myself off from people to deal with it by myself. And then kind of once I've kind of come over that, then kind of talk about it. But it's almost like you're going through it and everyone is there with you. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because sometimes from my perspective, I do feel like I cut myself off, whether that be from friends or even sometimes with my husband, where I'm like, I have zero things to give right now. And I retreat, I pull in. But what's been a constant in my life ever since I was a little girl is writing. Writing helps me give words to my pain. It helps me give a voice to the things that I'm feeling. And so I write. And so in writing, I'm able to help other women, I feel like, find words to their feelings, and therefore they feel less alone. And then I feel less alone because of the amount of women that I'm able to connect with. Because something else I've learned is that even though the details of all of our lives are so different, the feelings that we experience are the same. And when we can identify what those feelings are and then give them a voice is when healing can start to happen, because once you give a voice to your pain, you stop running away from it. It stops feeling so scary, and it then starts to become a teacher. And so I think that's why writing and connecting with women for me has been so crucial in my healing process, is because it puts pain in this position of being my teacher instead of something that just scares the hell out of me every day and prohibits me from getting out of bed in the morning.
And tell me if you feel comfortable about talking about this, but I don't even know how it's possible. And this makes me so angry. I just met you, and it makes me angry to even know that this can happen. How someone can adopt children and then after 4 years for them to be taken away. How can something like that happen? And how are you not angry and bitter? You seem to be handling it and navigating it with grace. I mean, how?
It's a lot. And to make sure I clarify, we hadn't fully adopted the kids, but we were their permanent guardians. However, there are also instances where full adoptions are disrupted. And this can start becoming a heavy topic, because there are some people who believe 2000% that no matter what, no matter how much time has passed, no matter what has taken place, that children are always to be with their biological family, right? And so there's like this part of this heated discussion, whereas we've seen the downfalls of the foster care system. We've seen how there's a lot of laws that don't protect this country's most vulnerable people, which is the kids. And the anger that you talk about is something that we have felt every single day, really, for the past 4 years. And it's really hard to reconcile, because the grief process feels like this loop, because it's still open-ended. There's still these 2 children that we raised and poured into, and we're a family unit, and they had us as a family unit for so long. But now they're out there living in the world, and there's no communication. So then your mind starts going in circles of, where are they? Are they okay? All of these things. And then it's also hard to navigate, because there's a lot of things that we could share. But then we also have to draw the line of, well, what would be harmful in their lives to share? But then how do we also raise awareness that there's a lot of things in the child welfare system that needs to change? So it's a lot. Yeah.
It's very angering too, just, agreeing with what Tammin said. When I sat there and actually listened to the story of what happened as like how they were taken away, it was almost, as a mom, like too much to bear, like just listening to it. If it's okay with you, do you mind describing, just if people don't really know the story, what exactly, because I just want people to have some context so they know, I mean, for you guys, how traumatic it was,
Yeah. So, I need to also be clear that my husband and I were not foster parents, because in a foster home situation, the goal is always reunification 100% of that time. So you go in and it doesn't make having the children leave your home any easier, I can imagine, but you know that as a foster parent, like that is the end goal.
Right.
Yeah. Being a foster parent was nothing that we ever pursued. And we were signed over permanent guardianship from the biological family to us. The four of us thought that we were going to be a family forever and always. So during the final adoption process, we experienced a very unexpected contested adoption from someone in the biological family. Which put us in 2 years in court. Those 2 years were hell. We couldn't talk about anything because everything that we said on social media was used against us. And you probably notice, like, even now in your lives, people take things out of context. They twist your words. They do all these things. Well, during that time, it was like we were just absolutely silenced. And it was horrific. And then 4 years ago, I was on the other side of the country for work. I had totally stopped traveling for work because I just was home with the kids and taking care of what our family had needed. But it was our biggest event of the year. And I was like, I'm going to go to this, like we have to continue living our lives. And while I was gone, there was an emergency court hearing called. Originally, we were supposed to have like the final week of court the following month. So I get a phone call from my husband, and I was assured that everything was going to be okay. I got a call from my husband, and he says, Ashley, they are returning the kids to the biological family tomorrow. And they're not giving you time to come home and say goodbye. And the next day, my husband had to drop the kids off at their school. We were under court order that we couldn't tell them what was going on. And that was the last time that we ever saw them. That moment, that's a moment that I replay in my head over and over again. Because as a mom, that like all you want to do, like as a mom, is your goal in life is to protect your babies. Your goal is to provide them love and keep them safe and protect them. And when I could not do that any longer, it sent me into this spiral of feeling like the biggest failure ever. Like I hated myself so much for not being able to save them from the pain that they were experiencing. And and again, like it's so hard still because like the love doesn't just go away. Like you don't just stop being a mom. But we also haven't seen them for 4 years.
Do you think that as they get older, they will want to reconnect? Or do you think that they'll be so confused by this whole, I mean, again, how would you know? But is that something you would like?
Oh, I would love that. We sent them, so we had to say goodbye through letters.
Mm-hmm.
And in the letter I wrote them, I told them, I said, my phone number will always be the same. I will always be here for you, loving you, waiting for you. And yeah, that's one of the things that keeps me going is, what if one day they reach out hoping to find me and I'm not here anymore? Like, I got to get out of bed. I got to keep going. I got to create a life that they would be proud of their mom creating, and that they wouldn't hold guilt because the pain of it all was too much for me. And so I just stopped living my life. Like, I don't want them to ever feel like, I want them to be proud, and I want them to not have to carry any weight of the effects that everything has had on our lives.
Mm-hmm. When you go through trauma like this, and you've got your partner, your husband, what does that do to your relationship? Does that make it stronger? Does it make it weaker? Does it make you think about, if it can go on? Does it make you reevaluate things? Like, what effect did that have on your relationship with your husband?
For us, it affected everything. And there was a time right when things were getting really bad in the court case where I looked at him and I said, if we lose the kids, I don't know what I'm going to need, but I might need to have a break from you. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue on in this life together. And he looked at me and he said, Ashley, no matter what it is that you need, I'm going to be here waiting for you to figure it out. And when he said that, I knew that we would be okay. I didn't know like the logistics of how we would be okay, but I knew that we would. We ended up selling everything that we owned in our house in Phoenix and our house that we raised the kids in. And we moved to Nashville, where we wouldn't know anyone, where we could start all over, and where we could just like rely on each other and figure out what the next step forward was going to look like for us. So we stayed there for 2 years. It's really, it feels impossible at first because we were parents, like going from being parents to now just us two alone 24/7. That's a lot. Like, it's a lot to just figure out. I mean, and it was so quiet and there was so much time on our hands, and we would just stare at each other and we're like, what the hell are we supposed to be doing right now? Like, what do we even like to do? What do we love about each other anymore? And so we started with, okay, is there something that we could do together? So the thing that saved our marriage was boxing. We started boxing together. We just beat the crap out of bags and we picked up this hobby together, and we just started trying to find little things that got us out of bed together each morning. And so now, years later, our relationship is stronger than it's ever been. But for a while, we didn't know if we would make it this far together.
I remember, so after my first daughter, I had many miscarriages between daughter 1 and daughter 2. And the worst miscarriage, we, gave birth to the sort of fetus on the floor of our living room. And I remember just holding my husband and like crying with him while it happened. And I was like, we can't recover from this. Like, how are we going to be able to, like, in a way, like you said, like, I feel like I did something wrong. Like, my body did something wrong. I failed. I felt guilt and shame. And it actually brought us closer than we've ever been. And it's what, this other podcast that we did with Little Miss Mama, Ashley, she just said that, pain and loss and grief can really unify because it's something that we all understand. Someone's greatest pain might be different than somebody else's greatest pain. But like love, we've all grieved in some way before, and it brings us together either with your relationships or with other people. It connects us. So, you said that hopefully your grief and your pain will be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you ultimately wrote a book and it's going to change people's lives.
Mm.
I hope so. I think that like I said earlier, is that our stories are all different, but the feelings that we have are the same. And I think that once we realize that, and then we can start learning how we best need to process our grief, and then how someone else needs to best process their grief, and then how our partner needs to best process their grief. It adds this layer of love and compassion and empathy, because we start seeing the people around us differently. We start understanding that maybe their experience of the world is in such a way that that's why they act that way. And then how can I best show up to support them? And I think, something that I really hate hearing, and I hear this a lot, and I also know that it's true, but it's often said that hurt people, right? But I also know that healed people heal people.
Right.
And we can all, and listen, if someone were to say this to me 4 years ago, I would have wanted to punch them in the face. But there's this moment in our lives where we have the choice to choose to stay hurt or to keep walking on a path of healing.
I agree.
And I believe that healing isn't going back to how things were before, because once you go through something, and you're not supposed to be the way you were before. You never could be. You've learned too many things. You've grown too many ways. You have these new lenses in which you experience the world. You're not supposed to be how and who you were before. And that's okay. And that's its own level of grief too. But I think healing means that you're committed to keep moving forward on a path, and empathizing with others while learning how to rebuild your life in such a way that you still feel joy, even if you feel sorrow, and you still feel excitement, even if you feel sadness. I love the word "and." Something that grief has taught me is the word "and," that I can feel joy and sorrow. And it's okay to feel both of those things, because it's part of my human existence. And so then when I can recognize that in someone else or in my spouse, the level of love and understanding that I have for them is just far greater than it was before understanding grief on such an intimate level.
Also, when Little Miss Mama Ashley Stock was on a couple weeks ago, we were talking about grief language, because, she's been through also very, very traumatic grief in her life. And she was saying, I was asking her, I said, because for somebody that's looking in from the outside, trying to talk to somebody that's processing something, sometimes you feel like you're not saying the right thing, or, you don't know what to say, or you don't want to say the wrong thing, So she was saying, it's really important for us to learn the language of grief. And I just, from you, and everywhere language is different, what might be right for somebody might not be right for somebody else. So for you, what has that journey looked like? I mean, if you were going to tell somebody who, might be on the outside trying to help somebody else go through something, what should they say to that person? What is the right thing to say?
I think that the first right thing is to show up, whatever that looks like. And you know what? We all say things wrong. We all get things wrong at whatever point in our lives. And so I think the most important thing is showing up. But something that feels really important to me is that when you're going through grief or loss or tragedy, whatever the situation is, you feel really lonely. You feel alone. You feel scared. feel very vulnerable. And something that can be really hard is when people are trying to comfort you and they say, I can't even imagine how you feel. I can't imagine. And when you hear that enough from so many people, when you're already feeling so alone, it just kind of makes you feel more alone. Some of the best things that were said to me were from people who would say, I've been trying to imagine how you feel, and I'm so sorry, and I'm gonna sit here in it with you, because no one can take it away. You can't take your friend's pain away, and you're not supposed to. But I think the most courageous thing that you can do, and the most supportive thing that you can do, is try to put yourself in their shoes and then just sit there in it with them for however long that might be. And maybe part of that includes putting little reminders on your phone, like an important birthday or an anniversary or date is coming up. I want them to know that just because the rest of the world has moved on, because it's, the 3-month grief limit is up, that I'm still here, and I'm still sitting with you in this.
I feel like because so many people who have gone through such traumatic events I think there's like this, I just don't think people ever really tell others what they need. Because again, going back to that shame or vulnerability. And so then people don't know what to do. And then on goes the perpetual cycle of someone grieving, someone making them feel worse, because we all feel so ashamed for the things that we deal with. So we do shut down and we shut people. I mean, I know I do. I shut down, shut people out, don't get back to them. And maybe if I just said, hey, like, this miscarriage really sucks and I'm really in pain, maybe I would get what I needed, But I do think that's something that I've been learning a lot about too. I don't know if I do it as much as I used to, but it's toxic positivity, which is, you'll be in a way you're trying to make someone feel better, and you're saying, but like if someone broke their leg, let's say, and you go, you know what, but at least I know you broke your leg, but at least like in time your leg won't be broken and you'll be okay. And so it minimizes their pain and it makes them feel worse because you're not acknowledging, and I'm sorry you're going through that. What can I do to help? I'm here for you. It's this like, toxic positivity where you do feel like you're trying to help, but you really aren't.
Yes. And I think there's this honoring that can happen between people when someone can just say, I see, like acknowledging it and then acknowledging how much it sucks. I think those two things will go farther than you could even realize. Just people want to be seen. They want to be validated, and they want to know that you're going to be there with them right now and in the upcoming months and year when they're still going through it. And so I think that's a really profound thing to say, Tammin, is let's acknowledge it. We're not here to fix it, but we can sit in it with them and let them feel supported.
Too, dealing with grief. I mean, it goes up and down all around, it twists and turns. Does the pain get better as time goes on, or does it get harder? Or does it change, day by day? Sometimes it feels easier. Sometimes it feels harder. What does that progression look like?
It changes. Yeah. The pain changes because I think that it doesn't go away. It's like, it doesn't go away. But how you carry it changes, and how you experience life through a new lens changes. And how you learn how to continue moving forward with it changes. And so I think a lot of people that are grieving, this is actually why I wrote my new book, I Am Here, because what happens, that at least in my life, is that you go through the hard thing, right? And you like get yourself pumped up to just keep trying to get out of bed every day, and you keep going. But then there comes this point where a year or 2 years, 3 years goes by, and now it's really time to start rebuilding your life. But everything feels different because you're different, and the world feels different because you view it different, and it can become scary because pain has changed you.
Mm.
And it starts getting really confusing at first, figuring out, what do I believe? What do I believe about myself still? What do I believe about the purpose of my life? Do I feel safe in my life anymore? There's just all these new questions and views that you have. And so pain and grief change you completely. And it's something that takes a lot of reconciliation to start being able to accept and say, my life isn't what it was, and it's okay, because it can still be something beautiful.
Does pain also open you up in a way that you never thought you'd be cracked open as well? I've heard that from a few people, that when they experience something so traumatic, it's like all the things that mattered so much and the trivialization of life, it just starts to like wither away, and like life is now brighter and scarier and more intense, and like the relationships you have matter so much more, because now you know what it's like to lose something. I mean, that's
yeah. And something that I hear often and that I fully believe is that the deeper your pain, the deeper your grief, is also the greater your joy. Because when you know the drastic contrast between the two, like I'll never forget the first time I stepped outside of Nashville when we bought our new house, and I felt the sun hit my face, and it was like this reminder that I was still alive and that there was still this future for me. That moment of the sun, like feeling the warmth, impacted me so deeply. And those little things that you just get going in the cycle of life. And a lot of times it's easy to not pay attention to those. But grief opens up these new little details in a way, because you're grasping for anything to allow you to keep moving forward. And something else that pain has taught me, I think a lot of times that we look for answers out in the world or outside of ourselves to try to fix ourselves, to try to heal ourselves, to like, if I drink enough of this bottle, like, can I just forget my problems? Or if I eat enough of this thing, or if I spend enough money here, can this go away? Yeah, can this fill my voids? Pain has taught me that the very things that we're looking for are already inside of us. And like, we're the rainbow at the end of the storm that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And so when we listen and allow pain to teach us again, we're able to uncover things about ourselves and about life that we just very easily would have passed by.
I always say to my husband, on your deathbed or whenever it's the last moments, you're not thinking about the awards that you won. You're not thinking about the likes on social media. You're not thinking about the money you spent on your Chanel bag or your hair extensions. But yet it matters. So if you feel like it matters so much in that moment, like, can I buy that? Can I do that? Can I look good? Your stretch marks, whatever it is, your lines on your face, like, it doesn't matter. My husband had COVID in January, and there was a couple of days where we thought he wasn't going to make it. And the only thing that mattered was his life, like him, his soul, his heart, his body, like that is all that mattered. And I remember going into the grocery store, just like completely just, on adrenaline, just thinking like, all I want to do is save his life. That's all I want to do. And nothing else matters. And, we can, but we don't live like that all the time. But I almost wish that we had those reminders. Not obviously you don't want your husband getting COVID all the time, but those reminders to come in without having to have something like that to like make you wake up.
It's a hard thing.
Yeah. It's a really hard thing. And, there's something that I started doing during that time because of those reminders, and also just trying to find the things in life that keep to keep me propelling forward. But I started asking myself 5 questions every day. And I still ask myself those 5 questions every day because it helps me focus on what's important and it helps me keep me moving forward. And the 5 questions are, what is my intention? So like, what is today? If this was my last day, like, what is my intention today? It changes. Sometimes I just want to show up as a big ball of love to someone who needs it. Sometimes I want to just be able to connect with my husband, or sometimes I just want to be the best freaking aunt ever so that my niece and nephew have the greatest day and feel loved, right? Like whatever it is, like what is my intention today? The second question I ask is, why am I worthy? Like, why am I worthy to experience today? Why am I worthy of the joy? Why am I worthy of whatever? Because I think a lot too, when you go through grief, you also go through guilt, survivor's guilt, or guilty of feeling happy after loss. And so asking yourself, why am I worthy too, has been really healing. The next question I ask to like bring myself back to the day is, who can I serve? Like, who can I serve today? Who needs me? My pain has taught me something. Who needs me to see them in their pain now? The fourth question is, what can I set down today? Like, what false beliefs or what heavy things am I carrying can I sit down? And then the last one is, who is the truest version of myself? How would the truest, bravest version of myself show up today? And as I go through those 5 questions every morning, and it can take me, I'll do it after my meditation, so it can take me just a couple minutes. But those help me refocus on what actually is important so that I'm living my life in an intentional way, so that at the end of my life, I'm not regretting just letting it pass me by.
Yeah, and you're also, you know, there's gratitude in there, and it's also serving others, which I think is such an important lesson. I'm curious, did those 5 questions come out of any sort of, you know, like any sort of the trauma that you've experienced? Or was that something that you sort of have always done, that was always there? Because I know I was looking at one of your posts and I thought it was so interesting. You were talking about growing up as a young girl and, you know, kind of fitting into that box of being quiet and being silent and being small and doing the things we're supposed to do as girls growing up, you know, like just being soft and quiet and sweet. And really coming into yourself and finding your voice, you know, and how that change sort of happened. So was that part of that process, or was this something that happened after?
Yeah. So you know, I think it took me losing my voice for me to actually really find it. And so these questions, I started uncovering them when we moved to Nashville as we were coming out of losing the kids. And I go in depth with these questions in my book, but it was like they built off of each other, because at first I just had to find an intention for my day. I had to figure out, why am I getting out of bed? Like, why does it matter? I have nobody to take care of anymore. I could lay in my bed for months and it would not affect anybody. And so I had to get very intentional with how I was spending my time. So that's where I started. And then as I started seeing that make an impact in my life, like the next question would come up, and then the next question would come, until I got these 5 questions that really fueled me to rebuilding a beautiful life in the midst of heartache, that has turned into something that I'm really proud of and that I'm really happy to wake up to now every day. Even though it doesn't look like how I once dreamed it would, I still find so much joy in it because I've been intentional about what I'm doing with my time and finding joy in those things. And like you were talking about earlier, not in a toxic positivity way, but in a very real, this is my life. This is the time that I have here on earth. What am I going to be doing with it so that I don't regret wasting my time?
So the future for you right now is, obviously you have so many incredible things in your life that is helping people book podcasts. And then, you know, you had said on your Instagram that you're going to stop trying, which is, by the way, exactly when I got pregnant. My doctor was like, we'd had so many miscarriages. The doctor was like, please stop trying. I was like, okay, we'll have sex on my period and the day before my period. And we got pregnant, and she was 10 pounds.
Wow.
I love that. And she's like, she wanted to be here no matter, you know, the doctor was like, take a break. She was like, I will not take a break. So then you're going to stir it up again. And like, what does that look like for you? I mean, I know for me, trying to get pregnant was actually one of the most unsexy, hard, sad,
Oh yeah.
painful things I'd actually had been through. I definitely think after you've had loss of a baby, a fetus, a miscarriage, I think it's very difficult. But people who are trying every month, it starts to become like the TTC, trying to conceive is like not a fun experience. So what is going to happen next? Where like what in regards to your fertility journey?
So we're right now, we're giving it one more month, and we're adding on an IUI, which basically means that you don't have intercourse. So like sex is totally taken out of it. And it's like the
I'm
science.
sure he's great, happy about that.
I know, right? Like, will this help you have a baby? Yeah. And then after that, I said I need an emotional break, because we realized since last January, I've been going to the doctor at least once a week now for over a year because I was pregnant, high risk pregnancy, got sick, lost the baby, was still sick, and now we're doing fertility. And I'm like, I just need a break because here's something else that I've learned is that it's really easy to live your life waiting for the next thing to happen. And when we keep waiting for the next thing to happen, we miss out on everything that already is.
True.
And
so true.
And I don't want to live in that pattern. And so I know that taking a break will help me reset, will help me just enjoy life with as it is. And then when we know that it's time to start trying again, we'll start trying again. But something else I try to do is I try not to get too far in my head because when I get too far in my head, then I start stressing out and I think, well, but I'm going to be 35 in November and we still don't have kids with us. And then what if it takes 2 more years? And, like I go down this spiral. So I really just focus on what am I doing today? Are there things that I can do to support me in these upcoming weeks? And then based off of the information that I gather, between now and then, we'll decide what happens next.
We talk about infertility a lot on this podcast and, so many women are going through it and it's, a battle and it's a journey and we're all doing, I think talking about it is so amazing because it makes the conversation, it normalizes it and it gets it out there and makes women not feel alone. So for you along this journey, has there been anything that sort of helped you emotionally or mentally sort of get through, because it is a roller coaster, is there anything that's sort of helped you kind of make your way through it?
This fertility part that we're currently in is so new. It's we're only at the first month at the fertility clinic and so it's so new and fresh. And I have friends who also are in the similar situation. And so finding a group of friends that I can just talk to and I can say, and I know that they've done what I'm now doing and being able to ask like, hey, what happened when you were doing this, and this? We also are in a infant loss support group that has been really helpful. And I think that that's something that can provide a lot of support is finding people who are going through or who have been through what you're going through, because then you are able to connect with people just on a level that you might feel a little bit more understood and feel a lot less alone.
So as we finish up this show today, what is something that you can give for people who have gone through loss, grief, trauma, fertility? What's like your greatest sort of life statement?
It's I am here. I want you to in whatever moment today, and you know what, you might feel crazy doing this because I fully get it because I've done it many times, but something that I do is when things start getting really overwhelming, I want to escape it. I want to escape my life. I want to run away. I want to fill the voids. But what I have learned is that the most powerful thing that we can do is be here and accept our life, all of it, as it is right now and know that all of it is happening for us and not to us, but happening for us. And so something that I do, and my husband and I started doing this several years ago, but I will close my eyes and I will throw my arms up in the air, and I will literally yell at the top of my lungs, I am here. I am right here. And it helps me just know, like, I have made it through. You have made it through your worst moments to be right here. And what a powerful journey you've been on, sister. Like, look at how strong you are to still be standing. And it's time to reclaim that power so that you can continue to be here throughout your whole life and be intentional with how you're living it. And I know that things can get so hard, but I also know that you were born to shine even in the midst of all of that.
I am here.
You said that, and I just visualized a tattoo on my arm because, you know, I have such negative self-talk that I'm working on. And it's just like, if I could just love myself and accept that, like, I matter, like, maybe it would just all get better.
Do you think do you really have that? Like, where you feel like it's not like
I have a very bad self-esteem, but there's reasons for it. It's not my family's fault at all. It's just the nature of how I was, a working actress when I was 14 years old. I don't know if a 14-year-old, 15-year-old should have that kind of pressure and feel that type of failure and be sort of emotionally neglected because they were constantly in an adult world when they were just a kid. Like, I never really got to experience, fucking up and, going on dates and, doing those. I was just always meant to be good. And like, I was never allowed to screw up. So I never learned how. So I just always felt like I felt like I was always failing. So as you get older, you feel like you're always failing, and then it's negative. Like, I don't know if I wake up in the morning and go like, I'm so great, I'm gonna kick ass. I'm always like, okay, don't be negative. Think of the positive things, and then my day gets better. But yeah, it's a constant work in progress. That's for sure.
Well, you just have to remember you're here. You were here, and you've made it.
You're here. And so, Ashley, where can people find you?
Yes.
Actually, Tammin, can I ask you one more quick? Can I ask you a question?
Please, you can ask. Oh, Lord, you can ask me anything you want.
because you are talking, and I'm just like listening to you and just like picturing this precious 14-year-old girl just wanting to be the good girl that you might have heard you were supposed to be or felt like you should be, and all of that pressure and feeling like you're failing. But what if you answered the question like, what if it wasn't failure?
Yeah.
What if it's not failure?
Yeah.
What would that mean for right now? Like those feelings that you feel when you feel like you're failing, what if it's not failure?
Yeah.
What if it's something else?
What's interesting is I had a Zoom call with this agency somewhere else in the world, nowhere here. And they said, well, we just have to see if these people like you, And, and I said back, and it was the first time, and you'll be proud, Ashley, it's the first time I actually stood up for myself. And I said, you know what? If they don't like me, I'm just going to keep doing my thing. I was like, I'll just figure out a way, Yeah. And it took me like a lot of like self-reflection and, a lot of therapy to realize that like I do matter. Maybe if it wasn't failure, it was just growth. Maybe that's what it was.
And it was something you had to go through to get to where you are now,
Yeah. And look, if my life means that my kids will not suffer the way I suffered, then that's enough for me.
Yeah.
You're doing
like
great.
I see my daughter sometimes like being not, like beating herself up. And now that I have the tools, it's funny because I read this quote that said, I'm in therapy because you didn't go to therapy. If everyone just went to therapy, we'd all be fine. So I'm just trying not to, I'm trying for my daughter to really understand her own emotions, and I'm trying to give her choices and options, and, so hopefully I don't fuck her up. I probably will.
Don't we all? I know with daughters, it's hard. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really a challenge, because like you're saying, like we've all been a little girl. We know what that
Yep.
feels like, and the pressures that are on us, and we're held to a different standard than boys are, and not that boys aren't. They have their own standards that they have to be held onto. But I think for women, we know what's out there, and we just do our best, right? We just try our best.
I'm reading this one quote that my therapist said today. She said, if you don't nurture the child within you, you cannot nurture your own child. And I was like, oh God, I got a lot of work to do.
Yes. Yes.
We neglect that child in us, though, don't we? That we
Mhm.
neglect that child in us. We don't listen to it,
Well, thank you so much for being here. We so appreciate you and your words, and that you are here.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yay!
Yay!
Where can people find you before we leave?
Yes.
You can come find me. I love my community on Instagram. You can find me at Ashley K. Lemieux. You can go to my website, theshineproject.com. You can purchase I Am Here Now wherever books are sold.
Mhm.
And love you guys. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank
We
you. We
are
love
so
you
honored.
too.
And Roxy Suxy, what do we do now? What do we say? I totally went blank.
Please don't forget to rate, subscribe, and comment wherever you get your podcasts, so we can keep bringing you amazing guests like Ashley.
And we are Women on Top Official on Instagram.
And Women on Top Podcast on Facebook.
And I am Tammin Sursock.
And I am Roxy Manning.
And we are
Women
on